Yeah.
We're done. What'd you guys do?
Yeah, I mean, with low key, we just did, we went and saw fireworks. My husband's director of Parks and Rec for our whole city. So they had fireworks display. So we went and saw that on Saturday night. My daughter had a swim meet during the day. But then the holiday, we just had my parents over, grilled and chilled. So it was nice.
That is the best. Okay. So this can be super cats, right? This is just going to be like you and I having a conversation because if you see my shows before, I chop them up a lot.
Yeah.
So I just kind of try to put as much of the highlight on you guys and your story. So I'm going to ask you pretty much the same questions I've asked everybody, really about, well, a couple of them. I don't want to tell you in advance, but the last one is going to be kind of your life Hall of Fame speech, so it could be just, that moment where you can thank anybody. Thank your coaches, thank your parents, thank people that made an impact in your life. Doesn't matter, so, and there are people that cry on it. So I would think I would be one of those people.
Right. You got to tug at the heartstrings.
Yeah. Let's see. That's about it. 20 minutes. I'll usually chop it up over the weekend. I'm traveling back to Connecticut this weekend, and so I'll try to chop it up tomorrow. But other than that, is there anything that you don't want me to talk about or ask? No,
I think we're
pretty
good.
much open.
I just personally, like, I just have to keep a fine line between true expectations, which is my side, person, and then my real job. So I'm probably just going to say that I work at a private school and not mention by name and just keep them separate.
Gotcha. Well,
Our principal gets her undies in a bunch if she thinks that,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I know. It's like, give me a break. I'm like, whatever.
I know. I usually education, they don't, maybe it's higher ed, they don't probably like side stuff.
No, but this way, she just has an axe to grind about anybody and everything. So it's just,
oh God,
it's better for me to just keep things very separate.
Oh yeah, you might as well.
Yeah.
So let's just jump right into it.
Okay.
And I think the first question is really about the 5% Club. You know how it kind of came about. You've been there for the beginning. You're one of the founding members. What is it? What was that moment that really resonated with you?
I think, for me, the 5% Club, obviously, there was an emotional connection. And I think, it is, the badge of honor, it's like the blue check on Twitter. It's something that only those of us who have done it, who've survived it, regardless of the level, regardless of the sport, we've got that, deep down inside that, you know what, I did it. I beat the odds. I was literally, roughly, like I said, within the 5% of the population that was able to do something pretty remarkable. And then I think too, seeing, people from across the country and ultimately eventually probably across the world that, are using the talents, the skills, the lessons within sport to now do these amazing things. And so many of us are working within athletics now and being able to give those same lessons on. So for me, it was a home run. Awesome. Glad to be a part of it.
I mean, we got lucky that we connected. I know it's like timing in life, right? And that whole video that just went viral from the beginning, and it wasn't anything that I planned. That's the beautiful thing about it. It was like, I think it was always when someone asked me about it, I said, no, it was hard because I grew up in Michigan to do that. And I think a lot of people that when you go through that, you always have to explain yourself later on.
Right.
Like, you ran track at St. John's. Right? You went to a Big East, basically a Power 5 school, and I would say arguably a Power 5 school because of basketball, but
right.
You didn't have to have that chip on your shoulder.
Right.
And I think the only thing that probably what I find now with a lot of those non-revenue sports, Olympic sport athletes, even if they played at a big name school, they still had a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because they kind of, you didn't go to you went to a basketball school,
Right.
right?
Right.
And right. And so, and I think everybody has a little bit of connectivity because of it. It's
Absolutely. Oh,
like,
absolutely. Yeah. And, and the difference, the differences is the experiences are obviously very different. And it's
yeah,
not a bad thing. I just think, for me personally, that's where I think where I've really kind of honed that blue collar work ethic, because you had to work for it. And also, as a female student athlete, you know, knowing that the odds of going beyond this experience are extremely limited. Most female student athletes do not have very many opportunities to go professional. So, your college eligibility is really, for the most part, like the expiration date on your athletic experience. Now, you can see the medals behind me, and some of us, still stay active and do things like that to keep the juices flowing. But in terms of, being a student athlete and those experiences, for the most part, those days are over, 22, 23 years old. So I think you kind of get that blue collar and you want to make the most of the experience while you're in it.
talk about your high school experience.
Yeah, high
what was that
school
high
was
school experience like?
yeah,
Go ahead.
it was interesting. I was kind of one of those kids where never really kind of found my niche. My parents had kind of, oh, let's try gymnastics, let's try dance, let's try this, and everything was like, it's all right. And my freshman and sophomore years in high school, I played field hockey and lacrosse, and I mean, it was enjoyable. Don't get me wrong. And then my junior year, I was playing a powder puff football game and running back and was blown by the track girls. So at the end of the game, I got one of these, and the athletic director and the track coach said, "You're going to run indoor track." And I said, "Okay." And went to states, but my first year running. So really didn't even start running track until my junior year in high school, and then was obviously fortunate enough to get go to St. John's on a full scholarship. I was half academic and half athletic, but to be able to get that done was a pretty big deal for such a kind of out of the blue experience.
What was that transition like then once you got to college? Like, what was that aha moment like? Okay, I'm not in high school anymore.
Well, I think, for me, it was just everything was still so new, and I think what was good about my experience, because I didn't have, preconceived expectations. I wasn't a kid that was running, AAU from, when I was yay high. So for me, it was all just new and trying to take advantage of every opportunity and every experience wide eyed. I was still learning, when I was in it and when I was in college. So it was, like I said, just kind of trying to figure out and take advantage of the opportunities, and understanding that, for me, I'm a middle class, kid raised, both my parents worked, but they were in an era where, my dad didn't go to college. My mom had an AA degree. So for me, my education and my athletic ability, that was my ticket. My future was on me. So I think I was really, focused on using the opportunity at St. John's, and then ultimately then Florida State for my master's degree, to get my education and use my athletic abilities and talents and connections to, define my career.
What challenges did you have in college, and what are the things what you have to overcome?
I think, it's everything and anything. I think, I tell, student athletes that I work with, number one, freshman year, especially as a student athlete, is just about survival. Don't worry about your times. Don't worry about your stats. Don't worry about any of that. Worry about surviving. You got to figure it out, really become an adult very, very quickly. And then of course, my freshman year, I had injuries, stress fractures, homesick, didn't do well. I changed my major 3 times in the course of a month, and just really didn't know, what I was going to do, what I was going to do. And then, like I said, I kind of had to reevaluate and say, okay, we're going to put the blinders on, take advantage of this opportunity, and figure out kind of what comes next. And then for me, I figured out, what, track is a means to an end. So I didn't even use my final year of eligibility. I had a boyfriend who was not my husband at the time. And the perspective just kind of changed. And I thought, what, I'm good. I'm satisfied with my athletic career. I'm graduating early. And then I went to Florida State for my master's degree and was fortunate enough to get a graduate assistantship there, working with in athletics, working with, student athletes and academic support, and was kind of just ready to move on. So it was a short, athletic career, but I felt like I had accomplished everything that I had set out to.
What was that transition like then from not playing anymore, kind of committing to that career discovery process? What was your career discovery process like once, you graduated from Florida State and then you're like, now what do I do?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was kind of just that natural, step up. I really didn't have much time because, like I said, I had gone immediately from being a high school athlete to a college athlete to working in athletics. And then as soon as I got my master's, I was fortunate enough to, to start working at University of Central Florida in academic advising, where I worked with, football, men's and women's golf, and some of our other Olympic teams. And then I worked in college athletics for, 15 years, ultimately as, director of player development for the football program. Was one of the only at the time, one of few females, working in the coaches hallway and on the sideline, in, coaching type role. So for me, it was literally just kind of just the next step in progression, and okay, now we're going to do this, now we're going to take on the next challenge and the next whatever comes next. And then obviously when in my days in college where I was kind of like, all right, I'm good, you kind of just know that it's time to move on, and you're not bitter, you're not upset, you just know that what, that journey is done, we're good here. And then obviously transitioned to working at a private school, in a little bit of a different role. I initially started out not even working with athletics at all, but that itch kind of, you can't really stay away for too long. And then was obviously fortunate enough, where I'm working as, associate AD, but working with our student athletes and preparing them for college, the kids that want to play in college, making sure that they are understanding the realities of what college athletics actually looks like. So really kind of just, trying to give valuable information from having been there, done that, worked in it, and giving them kind of the sneak peek behind the scenes.
I think the hardest part of that transition process is number one, figuring out what you don't want to do, right? And then it seems like you landed on something rather quickly of serving others and helping others. And that probably brings you massive amount of satisfaction in your life and probably presses that passion project button. It's a lot. So talk about that a little.
Yeah, no, my passion project is, True Expectations, Advising and Mentoring, which also known as TEAM, which basically, I try to help, prospective student athletes and their parents understand the realities of college athletics. As we know, college athletics, especially in the past, probably 5 to 7 years, has just changed exponentially, and it's going to continue to evolve. When you talk about the COVID years, the NIL, we look at the transfer portal. There's so many different things that are impacting the college athletic experience, super conferences, things along those lines, that it's very, very different than when we were in it. So, from my perspective, and still being, very well connected, is trying to make sure that these young people understand that college athletics is a business. It is a business that they can and should be successful in, but they need to understand the realities of it. And they need to understand, what it is, how they can go in and be successful. And for me, it's more about helping them find the right fit. You wouldn't buy a house, sight unseen. You wouldn't buy a car without test driving a few different models, going to a few different dealerships. So, college recruiting is the same thing. You've got to be able to differentiate, the ugly side of it, to what your wants are, what your needs are, and finding the right fit where you can and, should be successful academically, athletically, socially, and then it's a good fit for their families.
What's changed? What's changed for you since changed the kids, changed in the process for the good, for the bad? So, talk about that a little.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as a student athlete, your identity just changes and evolves. Now I'm a mom, and I've got a 13-year-old who is also a budding student athlete. She's a swimmer and she runs track. My husband was a swimmer and I ran track. So funny how those are the two sports that she's also landed on. But, your perspective changes. So it's, trying to coach her, not coach, but guide her, through what this looks like, being competitive, watching her evolve and having her own identity as a student athlete, that's obviously, been full of its challenges. But I also think, because my husband and I have been there, because we've done it, we see her experiences through a very different lens than some of the other parents that, you're on the sidelines or the pool deck with, that are maybe living a little bit vicariously through their kids, or have unrealistic expectations about what college athletics looks like. I heard one father talking about his 6-year-old. Oh, if she gets the chance to swim in college, and I'm thinking, she's 6. Like, give me a break, So, for me, it's all about, having honest, realistic conversations, and talking to, the student athletes that I work with. To me, I firmly believe there's a place for everyone. So, not everyone is going to be, D1 SEC. Some people are going to be D2, D3, NAIA, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's why I think it's more important about finding the right fit, and stop people get too caught up in, the colors. Obviously, I've lived in the state of Florida for a very long time, and this is not a knock on either school, but what I have found, very different than the Northeast, but like in the South, most kids in the state of Florida grow up wearing either orange and blue or garnet and gold. And there's a little bit of sprinkling of a couple other colors in there. But, my example to the kids is that doesn't mean, just because you are a, Florida fan, that doesn't necessarily mean that every single student athlete or student is meant to go to University of Florida and, play sports. There's other places, that we can look at. And it's more about finding the right fit, and taking the time. And also, looking to say, if you're a huge Florida fan, that's awesome. Maybe you don't have the opportunity to swim there or run track there or play basketball there, but let's look at another school. And then maybe after you finish your eligibility, go to UF and get your master's degree or your doctorate degree from there. So there's ways to accomplish the goals. So I think a lot of these conversations that I try to have is just being honest and saying, let's have a realistic expectation of what college athletics looks like. What is a good fit for you?
Talk about, what you share with parents and these high school students, all about the myth of scholarships and how being in higher ed, how we look at scholarship, that it's really just another form of rebate and a discount, just like you're buying a car in a lot of ways. So you talk about how you manage your expectations.
Yeah, I think it's important for parents and student athletes to understand, not everyone is going to be on a full scholarship. That's the reality. I try to talk to them about, looking at the statistics, looking at the numbers. There are only a select few number of head count sports. And even within that, when we look at the number of roster spots on those specific teams, the odds of getting a full D1 scholarship, are very, very limited. So it's a matter to say, look, what is the best fit? Where can we find, do we have academic money? Yes. Okay. Well, then let's look and see, can we kind of make this work and find the most, inexpensive, cost-effective way to get your undergraduate degree done. And then I also, encourage these families, if they're a strong student, they should be looking in the recruiting process, and as they're evaluating schools, not only where can they get that undergraduate degree done as quickly and as inexpensively as possible, but can they be a graduate transfer? Can they graduate early and start a master's degree and get that paid for? I mean, those are the life lessons that these kids need to be taking advantage of. The days of, spreading out an undergraduate degree for 5 years because you redshirted, those days are over. And if student athletes are doing that, they're doing themselves a disservice and they're leaving money on the table. They need to be taking advantage of all the opportunities that they can, and even now, with the NCAA waiving, the test scores, I still encourage student athletes, take the test. It cannot hurt you, take the test. So why would you potentially leave money on the table? If you could potentially qualify for academic money or other scholarships or things like that because you have a strong test score, why would you not? If there was $100 bill lying on the floor, would you leave it there or would you pick it up? So it's a lot of just having, not being afraid to have honest, conversations and making them think a little bit like, oh, that is a good idea, or that is a good point. And comparing it, to what they're looking for athletically and academically.
We say two things to parents and recruits when they come in. I said, don't look at the coaches, right? Don't look at the coaching staff, and take the sport out of the equation. 60% chance are either the coach is going to be gone, right? Or you're not going to be playing anymore.
Absolutely.
And so just getting on the rosters, you hit the 5%. But after that, just to be able to last is the odds are even lower,
Absolutely,
So
absolutely. And I ask kids point blank, when they're looking at offers and things like that, I said, take your sport completely out of the equation. Would you choose that school? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, then take it off your list. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, why would you want to go to school 4,000 miles away where mom and dad are never, ever, ever going to see you compete? You're going to be homesick. You're going to come out of school 100,000 in debt just so that way you can potentially play XYZ sport. No, let's find a better fit.
I went to the school that was in my hometown, and even though it was 5 miles away, never saw the campus. It's craziest thing because it was sort of a commuter school, so you didn't even think about it. And it was the last place in the world that I wanted to go to. I'm going to edit this out, but I wanted to share this with you anyways personally. But when I ended up going there was because the only school that would admit me, because I was a Prop 48 kid back in the 80s. So I had dyslexia. You're right. So I couldn't get in anywhere. So it was kind of like the parents are like, you're going there, Kristy. But the one thing, my father and my grandfather were able to go to every single practice.
Yes.
And in the beginning, for me, it was a little bit embarrassing because everybody, well, there's Rob's
Right.
dad and grandpa sitting on the hill with their lawn chairs, drinking coffee, right?
Right.
And then looking back at it after that, it was like they became celebrities.
Absolutely.
And they knew everybody on the team, all the coaching staff, all those years. And now this is all my dad talks about. He doesn't even talk about the games. He talks about, man, I love going to those practices because he was a blue collar guy. He'd get out of work and pull up in his jeans and his work boots and sit there, and he looked forward to it. It was his, and so those things you don't see it coming, but those things matter. Anyway.
Absolutely. And that, like I said, and that was the best fit, for you at the time, but also the best fit for your family. And those are memories and those are things that right there is what matters. And unfortunately, the current state of youth and college athletics right now, people have lost sight of that. They're too fixated on my kid's going to get a scholarship and this that they've lost sight of. No, this is supposed to be fun. And if it's not fun, then why are we doing this? This is about the life lessons. These are about the friendships, the relationships, the networking, the everything and these kids don't necessarily understand that being a college athlete, regardless of the level, is the hardest thing they will ever do in their lives. But if, like you said, if they can beat the odds, if they can survive that, I fully believe you can do anything they put their mind to. If you can do that, you can do anything, because it is the toughest experience that you will ever have for so many reasons. But you got to be able to embrace it. You got to be able to tough it out, which I think, like I said, so I think the 5%ers, we know that, like, we have that connection. We're like, oh, I know what you did. I know what you were doing at 6 a.m. or I know what, because we've all been there. We've all done it. We've all, seen our teammates at our best, and we've all seen our teammates at their worst.
And, it's funny because now, just in our offices, and I see, you have the end of the year banquets, just another side note that I'll edit out, but, all our female student athletes, and they show up, I'm like, I didn't even recognize you people. It's the first time I ever seen you with makeup on and showered.
I know.
Right? It's like, who are you girls? I don't even recognize you guys anymore.
I know.
But I think it's the only time that I realize now as an adult, it's probably one of the only groups of people that you have so much in common with outside of your own family and kids you grew up with.
Yeah.
And like you and I, it's that regardless of age or gender, it's that common, like, she's a savage. Like she's a savage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because these are the kids.
And it's cross sports.
Yeah, you think about your teammates, you spend more time with them than anybody you ever took a class with, anybody that in family that you saw. These are the people that you were with. Like I said, they saw you at your best. They saw you at your worst. They saw you sweaty, gross, no makeup, going to class immediately after, and getting it done. And you just have that mutual respect. Like I said, regardless of sport, it's that level of respect that, okay, they can hang. They're okay. They've got the check. We're good.
They got the check. And I think when you get older, you start realizing, there's fun rivalries and you like to poke fun and all that. But I think as you get older, you realize that there's nothing that you like better in business than people that you have a mutual respect and understanding and like-minded around. right? You almost
Absolutely.
like you crave those types of people that you run into,
Yes.
and and a lot of times they're not your neighbors. And if you do have neighbors or kids, friends that are like that, you're like, they're your best friends automatically, right?
Oh, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
talk about,
And then you also, like I said, and then you also see, ones when, they are maybe living a little bit vicariously or kind of have a little bit misguided notion just because they haven't done it. You can kind of see, so, I find myself kind of treading lightly and I'm, backing away a little bit or saying a little bit less, because you just don't know the level of understanding or what you can say, so I, kind of I tread lightly with non.
you do. So talk about those medals over your shoulder.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of just running is always kind of not always. Since I, that quote, once she figured out she could run, it changed her life. That's me. So yeah, running is my release. It is my, my stress relief. It has just kind of been my thing that, whether I've had a good day, a bad day, I need to get my run in. I run off the crazy of the day, and for me, it's important to keep, obviously for all the health benefits and all of that, but also, it's the only time of day where I'm not a mom, I'm not an employee, I'm not a wife, I'm not, anybody's anything. It is me. It is Kristy and those are my miles, good, bad, fast, slow, they are my miles and I work hard for them. So I'm proud of those medals, so I haven't gotten as many recently because I've just been, hitting up the treadmill and it's hotter than hot in Florida. But, that's something that, I still try to make sure that, I get my workout in, almost every day.
Talk about your dreams, that maybe things that you wish you chased a little bit in your life. Maybe a dream that died that at some point I'm going back to that dream.
Yeah.
What was it for you?
I think, for me, dreams, I kind of, especially, kind of being young and, when I was in athletics and college athletics, I thought, oh, I'm going to be a director, I'm going to be this, or I'm going to, and not to say that, I set it short or anything like that, but, when you become a parent, your priorities change, and then I kind of realized, college athletics, because people ask me all the time, why aren't you still in college athletics? People that don't work in college athletics don't understand. It's the same thing. If you haven't been there, you don't get it. Everybody wants to be in it until you're there. And then you're like, ooh, gotcha. This is not what I thought it was. And it's the same thing for student athletes as it is for those of us that worked in it. And it was great. Don't get me wrong. I've got amazing experiences. Some of my best friends, are still in it. But it's one of those things where I felt again, like, my time was done. I had had enough. I don't miss the 24/7, the, just overall disruption, rescheduling Christmas for a bowl game, those things. So, obviously, I had, bigger aspirations and, oh, maybe I'll be this, or I'll run my own department or, go to a big SEC school or things like, like that. But then, being a mom and being, raising a student athlete, that kind of won. And, for me, choosing to work, in a high school where I've got the same schedule, same work schedule as my daughter, where I can also still get my runs in the afternoons, drive my daughter to practice. Those things have become more important, which is also why, why I started True Expectations and my passion project to still, be able to make a difference. Because I figure if I can't, be in it at a college setting, making the day to day, at least True Expectations, opportunities like this, conversations, sharing my experiences, sharing my messages, and helping a few people have a better opportunity and a better experience at the next level, then I've done good. That's the goal at this point.
So how's this for a transition? This is your opportunity to give your Hall of Fame life speech. Up to this point, you still got a long ways to go, but up to this point in your career and your life, and it goes fast, as you know. I mean, it probably seems like yesterday you had your 13-year-old, right? So, who are those people along the way that have helped you?
I think, when I think back of the people that have helped, there's always been, very specific people, along my way. Obviously, my high school track coach was, the first one that I thank because he literally found me, and changed the whole trajectory of my life. Working in college athletics, Coach O'Leary, he is, a tough, old school, blue collar. I mean, that's who he is. And, being able to work in that program and really, help these young men, I mean, thousands of young men literally grow into men, and see the trajectory of their lives change. Obviously, like I said, my husband, the fact that we were both student athletes, we've got that mutual connection. And then my parents, supporting along the way. And then now, like I said, being able to kind of build true expectations and work in my current role and raise a student athlete. It's kind of all come full circle a little bit.
It's a good one. Nice job, Kristy. So, any final thoughts? How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, if people are, interested, if there's, anything that I can do to help along the way, whether you're a prospective student athlete, their families, or people just, I've mentored many, rising athletics professionals, people that just want to, talk, they can reach me at Kristy@trueexpectations.com. And then also, trueexpectations.com is also, I've got the links for all my social media sites, LinkedIn, and then can reach out. And I'd love to chat, love talking about sports and, mutual connections and how we can help this next generation.
Well, Kristy is one of the, not only the founder of True Expectations, but a founding member of the 5% Club. And we got so lucky to have you. And I love sharing your story because you are a savage. And so that's Kristy. I'm Rob. You're watching 5% Club. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks,
so
Kristy.
much. That was awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, it did great. You
Yeah,
didn't stop smiling the whole time. You
I
were like
know,
the happiest
because
person I know.
that's my favorite thing to do. Like my favorite thing to do is to talk about, like I said, help student athletes. And I mean, and really, like I said, that's my goal in life. That's where I'm at my best.